The FX30 has thoroughly impressed me in many ways, and I want to talk about those many ways in a very long video. So buckle up, because it's going to be a long video. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff in detail with examples and footage and all that jazz. So title screen. Like I said, it's going to be a long video, so here are the timestamps. So if you want to jump around, you can jump around. But of course, I would love to see you stay for the whole video. But you know, I know it's a long video. You can get a cup of coffee, or a protein shake. And we can hang out. Okay, a lot of stuff, a lot of ground to cover, so I'm gonna go over the stuff that I'm gonna talk about. We're gonna start with why I bought the FX30, and then I want to talk about the body itself, the body design, rigging, CF Express Type A versus SD cards, recording modes and formats, the autofocus Super 35 versus full frame, sharpness, image and color, dynamic range, dual base native, dual base ISO, noise performance and noise pattern and noise in general, ibis, rolling shutter, anamorphic mode and shooting anamorphic with it, photography, wireless control app, exposing S-Log3, working with S-Log and S-Gamut in post-production, value proposition, and my upgrade path for the FX30. And at the end also, I'm going to, wrap the whole thing up in a very fast fashion, hopefully. And, I'm going to present it to you to watch, to enjoy, to everything. But yeah, okay, so when I was contemplating buying a new camera, I had a couple of options in mind. First one being the FX30, and then the XH2S was a big contender in this. S5 2X for the Lumix S5 2X. And those were basically the three options. So over the summer, I had the opportunity to try out the FX3, FX6, FX9, and the Lumix S5 2X. And GH7, I believe. Didn't play a lot with the GH7, didn't play a lot with the FX6 and FX9, although they were pretty cool. I played around a lot with the FX3 and the S5 2X. S5 2X was a really great camera. I really thought that it was great. It came down to the fact that I already had E-mount lenses. Yes, it has great open gate, it's full frame. It just came down to the fact of a bit more emotional stuff, and it was the camera didn't want me to pick it up, or I didn't want to pick up the camera, and we didn't have this connection of oh, I want to go for the camera, I want to pick it up, and I want to film something. And as I get older, I am getting more into that emotional state of if it doesn't make me feel connected to it, I just don't want to pick it up, and I don't create then. So it led me to not wanting to get the S5 2X, even though it was a really great camera. And at the same time, I had time with the FX3, which is, I know it's not the FX30, it's not the same, but it still gave me a good feeling of what is possible, I guess. XH2S, on the other hand, was a completely different story. I only had 2 hours with it, give or take 2 hours with it at a camera store, and then basement, and some color checker and stuff like that. So I didn't have a lot of time with it, but I really fell in love with the image quality. The dynamic range was great. Noise performance and noise pattern was great. I really liked the luma noise that I was getting out of that. Great rolling shutter, open gate, internal ProRes, also on the S5 2X, so internal ProRes, with the Fuji XH2S2 internal ProRes. It was all really great, and I nearly got it. It was just the fact that Tilta Nucleus 902 didn't work with that. The Shinobi 2 does have offer control now, I believe, but the BM5 from Portkeys, BM7 and stuff like that, they don't offer that remote control ability, and that really was a big factor for the decision from my part, and the fact that I already had the E-mount lens and stuff, so that was a big decision. On that note, one thing, Small HD, from what I know, also doesn't offer camera control for FX3 and FX30, but they do offer control for FX6 and FX9, I believe. I'm not sure, I might be wrong about that. But the fact that this is the cinema line from Sony, I think there's a bit more of a opportunity from them to maybe offer something like that. So, and that's really important to me, again, because it's going to be in the future, it's going to be the B camera for the foreseeable future. It's the A cam, but in the future it's going to be B cam. And when I upgrade the monitors and stuff like that, I would like that to be able to work with it, and I can control the camera remotely and just let it sit there if it's like a tripod situation. So that was a big point. And again, with all that, I decided for the FX30. I bought it from MPB for 1,840 euros, I believe, which was a great price. And it was like from MPB, so you know, you can get the tax write-off and stuff like that with the company and stuff. So it was pretty great, and I have not regretted it a day since the day I bought it. So big props to Sony, I guess, and MPB for the good experience. Yeah. The body design part is a very subjective point, but I really love how the FX30 looks, and I like the boxy design, I like the materials choices, the colors, everything like that. And I don't really like the FX6 and FX9, how they look in that sense, but FX3 I think looks great. It has a heft to it, but it doesn't feel like, oh my god, it's too heavy, I don't want to carry it with me. Or it doesn't also feel like, oh, it's too nimble, it feels like it's gonna break. It doesn't feel any of that. It feels very good, has a very good heft to the grip. So the handleability is really nice. So I can, you know, grip my hand around that thing and then, you know, very comfortably control the camera and hold the camera. So I really like the body design. Buttons. Oh my god, buttons are so great. Buttons are so great. The outside recording button, that thing alone has saved me so many times, because I like to shoot like this, like with the top handle here, or with the side from here, and then, you know, pulling focus with this hand, something like this. So that, like this little move is such a lifesaver. So I don't have to be like, okay, the whole thing. It's just a really like little improvement, but I really like that. There are a lot of buttons on the body, and I really love everything. I've customized the ISO to change from dual native, change between a dual native base ISOs. So 800 to 2500 when I click it, and then like back, white balance and stuff. I really love it. Buttons are great. More buttons for everyone. It has a lot of mounting points, which is, I think, great. I usually run it on a cage and then a bigger rig type of thing, so I don't really care about that, but I think the connection is a little bit more stable, so that's great. I mainly run it in 3 rigs, so number one is I didn't use it a lot like this, but just with the camera and the cage and the lens, and that's it. It works really well. You can take it with you. It's a very minimal rig. It works really good. It's meant to be like that, I think, so it works real well. The second rig that I ran a couple of times is just with the cage, just the body, and then the lens and the top handle and the monitor, and just that, like no V-mounts, just the base plate of the tripod and nothing else, because it just is so easy to just carry it like that. You can just put everything in your backpack and then just go and then shoot whatever you need to shoot, whatever the job is, and then you're done with it. It's really incredible. But what I really love about the whole thing is the big rig. Want to make it even bigger. I'm gonna make a video about this at a point too, but very basically base plate, V-mount battery, rod on top, follow focus, lens support, top handle, monitor, and I'm not seeing anything else. Yeah, I mean matte box if needed. That's the big rig, and I really love it. I love the handleability of it. I can just go like this. I usually shoot like this, so it's really great. It opens up, I think, a lot more opportunities to shoot with. At a point, I really wanna, I know it might sound like it's unnecessary, but at a point I really like to go with a rig like what Caleb Pike has done. I think that's pretty sick. This is how I run it, like 70 to 80% of the time. This is how I run it. I usually leave it like this. I don't really touch it. If I need to touch it, yes I will, but I don't touch it if I absolutely need to. And I still love how heavy the thing is, because I don't know, when it's heavy I kind of like the handleability of the heaviness, and then, you know, moving around with it kind of feels easier, I guess, in a sense. Yeah, talk too much about the rig, but I like the rig. You can shoot 23.976, true 24, 29.97, true 48, 50, and then 60, and then 120. 120 has a little crop, but to be honest with you, I've never shot 120 FPS with it, not even to try it out. I don't think I will ever need to. I mean, at a point I might need to do it, but just I never shot with it at that frame rate, and yeah, I don't think I'm gonna try it out. But other than that, the normal frame rates are great. There's no crop with the 60. I have no complaints about that. I don't even know why I wrote this. Like it's great. No overheating. Oh yeah, the formats point. That's why I wrote that. The lack of internal ProRes is really what gets to me. I understand that, you know, it's not a need, but a lot of the industry is moving towards the ProRes thing, and I would have loved to see internal ProRes 422 or something like that. I mean, S52X has it, XH2S has it, and the fact that I don't own a Ninja, kind of like, again, not a huge deal. You can always get a Ninja, but still would have loved to see an internal ProRes. So FX30 accepts both CF Type A cards and SD cards. I have bought the Lexar 160 gig cards, and then this reader here, I found it on a deal, so I thought, why not go with it? Maybe like kind of future-proof it a little bit. But the fact comes to like, why CF Express Type A cards? You know, like Komodo X, the Pixis, the Fuji stuff, and some, I believe some Lumix stuff even. They have like CF Type B cards. Why CFA cards? Should I have gone with the SD cards? Maybe I should have gone with the SD cards, but I was like, yeah, found a good deal. So not a big deal, just a point to be talked about. Great, nothing to add. Aliens, Terminator 2, Black Hawk Down, Heat, Skyfall, Social Network, Zodiac, John Wick, Saving Private Ryan. I think the sharpness coming out of the FX30 is absolutely great. The first thing to note is when you're shooting in Cine EI mode, and I believe flexible ISO mode too, you cannot change the sharpness of it, because normally you can go into the settings and then you can go like, okay, -7 sharpness or like +7 sharpness. You can choose between that range. But when you're in Cine EI mode, you can't really do that. So you're stuck with the sharpness that the camera is giving you. I don't think that's a problem at all. I really like the sharpness coming out of it because it doesn't feel like overly sharp like the XH2S, because XH2S did really feel sharp. Like it was cut through sharp. I don't think the FX30 feels that way. So with the Tamron 17-70, which is a very clean, very sharp clinical lens, it's a photo lens too, so it is really sharp. With a sharp lens like that, I tend to soften it up a little bit, depending on the situation, of course. But with a lens like the Nanomorph that I'm shooting right now at T29, I sometimes don't touch it at all because of the sharpness of the sensor it gives and the softness of the wide open Nanomorph. Or sometimes if I'm going for a stylized look, I soften it. But it just, if I'm going for a stylized look. And that is why, like, I like shooting with lenses that have a bit more character, and they tend to be a little softer, especially wide open. I really like the sharpness that's coming out of the FX30. And the fact the sharpness is, it has a lot more to do with the lens that you're using. And yes, if the lens is also like very soft and the camera sharpness is not enough, that's a whole nother issue. But it's also very easy to soften images up. You can either use filtration on your lens, or again, in post-production, you can very easily soften the images up. So I don't think it's generally a problem, and the FX30 has no problem there whatsoever. The image that's coming out of the FX30, like straight image, okay, like S-Log3, S-Gamut3, that's Cine, shot in that, put it into DaVinci, CST or LUT, and then straight Rec 709. I think that look is a very good look. It's not like a Aria look or a red look or anything like that, but I think it's a very good starting point. It's a very good look for a lot of stuff too, for a lot of people too. Very good, neutral. It doesn't skew towards a lot of like green or magenta. There's a bit of tint in the image, but you know, it doesn't skew a lot. It doesn't render the colors so differently and stuff like that. It's a very good starting point. It's a very good neutral base image, and I really like that. Plus 422 10-bit, S-Log3, S-Gamut3 are great color spaces, great gammas, and with that, you're getting so much flexibility in post. I'm saying great flexibility in post, like a great example of this is in shooting like false white balance. Yes, it's not like raw or anything, but if we were to take this scene for as an example, And if we were to go a little bit more deeper into the whole image and color thing, if we were to take a look at the Rec 709 image, again, a very good starting point, a very good image. But if we were to just play with it, very little, like very basic stuff, some like shadow and teal and orange shadows and highlights, a little bit of contrast, a little bit of saturation. With very little modifications, you can still get some really good stuff out of it. And if you want to go a little bit more, you can build really good looks out of them. About the colors too, I do see a little bit of struggle sometimes with skin tones. For example, for me, my skin tends to get red a lot, and I do see that I'm not gonna say struggle, it just creates for me unpleasant images when it's like that, even though my skin is red, yes, but it's not like that red, and the camera kind of like makes it look like that, I guess, in some kind of a way. So I do see a little bit of problems in that area. But again, I'm going to talk more about the post grading workflow, the S-Log3 and S-Gamma3 in the later parts of the video, so we can go to the other point, I guess. I believe the FX30 has 11.9 or 11.8 stops of dynamic range with the signal to noise ratio of 2 in the Imatest results, which to me, for this price range, for a modern camera, I think this is a very good, very neutral point. It's not like, oh my god, it's great, but it's not like, oh god, it's crap. It's very like neutral good, I would say. Like if this is good, really good, if this is like bad, I think we're like kind of like here. I think it's a neutral good. S-Log3 is generally a great log gamma, which has a very filmic curve to it. So it recovers the shadows really well. It softens the highlights a little bit. At that point, highlight roll off. I think the highlight roll off is a bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes I really like it. Sometimes it just burns too hot. But in general, I think the highlight roll off is handled very well. This camera has native dual base ISOs, 800 and 2500. And it is very different than the 800 and 12,800 on the FX3. But to be honest with you, 800 to 12,800 is a 5-stop jump. And like 5 stop jumps is, I think, a little too. With the FX3, when you change that, it's kind of like getting it, yes, this like night vision type of thing. But when you just need a little boost and you like still switch to that, like 12,800, it's like you have to put NDs to it. It's a very luxury problem to have, I guess. But I've been very much liking the 800 to 2500 jump a lot more with the FX30. To be honest with you, I would have loved to see 800 to 3200, that it's a clean 2-stop jump, just because also like it would be so much easier to calculate the iris and the apertures and stuff like that. So I would be like, okay, T28 to T56, and you know, I wouldn't have to do a lot of math. And oh, it has to be split and stuff like that. It's not a big deal. Again, it's a very little nitpicky thing, but I really do like that, because when you're in a scenario where like, oh, I just need a little bit of boost, and then just switching to that really handles that very well. Or at that point, ETTR works really well with this. I talked about this, I think about 2 weeks ago. You can check that video out too. There's a lot of like detail in that video, which I'm going to talk about in this video too a little bit, but there's a lot more detail in that video. When you have exposed correctly for 800, you can switch to 2500. And then if you're not clipping and stuff like that, of course. And if you were to bring that 2500 image down to 800 in post-production, you are getting a lot cleaner shadows. And with this point, again, with the small boost, I think 800 to 2500 dual base ISO works really, really well. I think the noise pattern is pretty cool, nothing too funky going on. It's a very good noise pattern. I would say even like at some points it's pleasing. I also found in my test, again, like the video from last week, if you were to underexpose by 1 stop and then push the image in post by 1 stop, I think you're getting like really nice texture. One thing about noise to note is there are 2 types of noise, right? The luma noise and the chroma noise that you're getting. So luma noise is the monochromatic stuff that, you know, the stuff, and then the chroma noise, which is a bit more saturated, and then, you know, there's those like blotches of that. Problem that I'm going to talk about comes from 422 10-bit, but I'm not sure. I see in the shadowy areas these like color blotches. This was a lot worse in like 8-bit cameras. And with this camera, it is a lot better with 422 10-bit, but you're still seeing those blotches. And that is the one thing about the noise pattern that kind of bugs me. When I push it up, I don't think it's a bad look. I think I really like the texture of the noise. But the thing about that is I really see those color blotches in the shadowy areas. And that really disturbs me. That is really not pleasing to my eye. If we're saying, yes, we have exposed correctly, I don't think this problem is a valid problem at all. Yes, even with that, at really dark areas, you kind of see that. But again, not a problem at all. I generally very much like the noise pattern and the noise performance too. And to be honest with you, most of the stuff that I do, unless it's like a corporate thing, I add grain to it. So ibis is really great. It doesn't work against you, it works with you, which in some cameras you can't really say that, but in this camera I think you can really say that, or just I feel like it works with me and not against me. I think it kind of has something to do with the big body and small sensor, and then the axis and I don't know, the physics and stuff like that works kind of well. So ibis is really great. The active stabilization, on the other hand, is a bit of a mixed bag, because with tighter focal lengths, I see that it drags. You do this and it continues to drag and then stops. And then you go like this and then it continues to drag and then stops. And kind of like those little stuff that makes me think the active stabilization is working against me. But the thing about that is I don't really use active stabilization a lot, especially when I'm going handheld and the rig is heavy enough. I don't tend to really rely on that, because again, it's a handheld look, and the fact that it's heavy kind of means that you have better control to it. So it is something to note, but I don't think it's a problem at all. A hot topic, a hot topic again. So the FX30 has 15.8 or 15.9 milliseconds of rolling shutter. And I know rolling shutter is a hot topic, especially right now on the internet. Gerald Undone has a really good video if like, are we really able to see rolling shutter? I think 15.9, 15.8 milliseconds in general in this modern day and age is again, very in this like good, neutral good range, right? I think the rolling shutter point is going to come down to two questions. Does the audience see it? And does it change the way how you interact with the camera? And I think these are really important questions, because what we do is very much story-based. It doesn't matter if it's a commercial, if it's a music video, if it's a narrative project, it is very much story and audience-based. So if the audience doesn't see it, even more important question is, does it change the way you shoot? Does knowing that this thing has 15.8 milliseconds of rolling shutter, does that really change the way you shoot? Because I think it's also very personal in that sense of like how much of the rolling shutter that you are seeing and how much of it really bothers you. Personally, for me, it really bothers me. With the FX30, with wide lenses, you're not really seeing that. It's not a huge problem. There is a bit of that, yes, but you're not really seeing that. It's not a huge problem. With tight lenses, with the like nanomorph or like the Tamron or like a Helios, it's a 58mm lens, and then 58mm is like 90mm on the Super 35 sensor. When you put it on there and when you move, you really see that. And at that point, I'm thinking, yeah, it really bothers me. But I'm gonna counter that with one thing. It doesn't change the way I shoot with the camera. I like tight lenses, I like going tight, but even with that, even with those handheld shots, even with like, I don't shoot sports or anything like that, but even with like smaller, faster movements, it doesn't change the way I shoot. And I think, again, that's the most important thing. If it doesn't change the way I shoot, then I guess it's fine. Would I have loved to see sub 10 milliseconds? I would have loved to see a sub 10 millisecond rolling shutter performance. But again, this doesn't affect the way that I shoot, at least not in a way that I realize right now. So I think it's fine. And I also, again, have to add, I don't shoot sports. I don't use like, shoot like super high action stuff. So maybe I'm not the right person to talk about that, but I guess everyone's the right person to talk about that because it's on the internet. But that's a bigger question. Anamorphic and Sony doesn't really quite match. They're not really good friends, I guess. The anamorphic support on the Sony cameras are not great. So this camera has 2D squeeze modes. There's 1.33 or 2x. And if you're in between, like the nanomorph, You're not getting that. Is the big problem? No, a lot of monitors has that. The wireless monitor plus app has these squeeze options, a lot of these squeeze options. It's that little quality of life thing. And other than that, the modes are also like not anamorphic friendly at all. But again, you're not getting open yet. You're not getting 4x3, 6x5, or anything like that in modes like that. The question would also be like, would you expect to get that in a camera of this budget? I don't know. Would it have been cool to see that? I think so. But again, there's no big anamorphic support, but monitors have these squeeze options. The wireless apps have these squeeze options. So something to note, but not a big problem. Like, it will not stop me from shooting with anamorphic lenses. So I guess that's why I can count it as not an issue. I've only shot one like project. I wouldn't say project. I was doing a test shoot with the Nanomorph, and then I shot a couple of photos with the FX30. It turned out really well. It does a great job on that. I think in a pinch, not even in a pinch, like you can, when you're taking this out for like a day trip or like travel camera, you can easily use it. So like, this is your only camera, you can use it to take photos. It has like 26 megapixels or something like that. I think it's great. So let's give Sony props for doing the wireless control app right. Okay, so it has a lot of stuff. Like, that I'm really happy to see that. Really, you can control your camera with the app. You have these squeeze options. You have false color, which is amazing, really incredible and accurate false color. You have looks, you have zebras, waveforms, and everything like that. Like, it's very much great. Like, and the fact that you de-squeeze, and then when you put the aspect ratio markers on and it shows them in the right place. I know it's like a very little thing and it should be a very basic thing, but my monitor doesn't do that. It's a very, very little thing, but I really, really like that. As far as delay goes, like, I'm in a controlled environment. Like, I'm at my home. Yes, there are a lot of like electronic stuff, but there are not a lot of people and stuff like that. And like, maybe 30 to 40 milliseconds, like live view 24 FPS right now. So there's no frame drops. I think delay is also like great. It's not made for focus pulling, of course not, but in a pinch, could you really do it? Again, not made for that, but the fact that you can is great. Exposing S-Log3 is, again, same as exposing anything else. But before that, I want us to understand one thing. There are two types of exposure. There is a technical correct exposure, and there is a creative correct exposure. And there is no creative correct exposure. Creative correct exposure is what you decide, what the DP decides, what the director decides. It could be too bright, it could be too dark, and that would still be correct because it is what the narrative requires, and that is that. So the correct creative exposure does not exist. There is a technical correct exposure though, which Sony tells us for the S-Log3 is 18% middle gray at 41 IRE, which would be something like this. Now, to expose S-Log3 correctly, you would need, in general, a gray card, an 18% middle gray card, and then you would open up your zebras, and then you would say, okay, or the false color with the green, I believe. You would say, okay, this is going to be 41% IRE zebras or green. That would be the correct way of exposing S-Log3. Or you can say, it's usually said, like, my skin tone is around 70 IRE, or in general, like, skin tones are around 65 to 75 IRE. So you can hit around that range, and then you would have exposed correctly. But there's a bit more to exposure. You can always use ETTR as a technique, exposing to the right. So it's kind of like overexposing a little bit to the point that your highlights are on the edge of breakup, like it's not clipped, but it's on like edge of breakup there. And then you can bring it down to get cleaner shadows, less noise in your image. That is a possibility that you can do. And again, there's a video from me that I have done those experiments. When you do that, you are really getting less noise in your image. So at that point, it becomes like, if you have the chance, you can always ETTR, or you can always push it up, like open up your lens to the widest that it goes before your image clips, and then you can still bring it down in post, and then you would still get a very clean image. So that is a possibility. But it's kind of like there is no right answer here. Again, technically correct answer is 41 IRE middle gray, and that's it. Other than that, there is no correct or wrong. Flexible ISO versus cine is an interesting test. Again, test results there. I'm showing you the test results. I'm overlaying them right now probably. There is a very, very little highlight difference. And I mean very, very, very little, because we're talking like, okay, I have a scene that requires me to shoot at like 1600 ISO. So what am I going to do? Am I going to be pushing flexible ISO 1600, or I'm going to do Cine EI 800 and then push it up one stop? Or am I going to be like 2500 and then pull it down to 1600? So that becomes the question. And at that point, 2500 brought down to 1600 is less noisy than what 1600 would be, and 800 pushed to 1600 is again more noisy than what normal 1600 would be. If we were to go to flexible ISO 2500 versus Cine EI 2500, or like flexible ISO 800 and Cine EI 800, there is a bit of highlight difference that you're getting, but it is very negligible. You're not losing like, oh my god, you're losing 2 stops of dynamic range, nothing like that. You have a bit of a softer roll off, you have a bit more information and highlights, but really a little bit. Sony says that there is a bigger importance, I think, to that, but there really isn't. But again, if you want to shoot at 1600 ISO, you can 2500 and bring it down, or like 1600 or even 800 and bring it up. It should not be a problem. Shooting under the base ISO has kind of been like a, oh my god, don't do it. No, it has become like that kind of a thing. It's actually nothing like that. You're not losing, oh my god, you're losing so much dynamic range there. It's kind of like the same thing with the flexible ISO versus Cine EI. You're maybe losing just a tiny little bit of information, maybe some highlights, maybe some shadows. But if you're ever in a situation that you need to use ISO 200, use it. It's nothing like, oh my god, I can't use it. The point that I'm trying to make is, shooting under base ISO, Gerald London has a great video about that for a couple of years ago. Shooting under base ISO is not bad. If you need to do that, then you need to do that, and it's fine. You can always have an ND filter on, so it will be a lot easier. S-Log3 and S-Gamut3 are really great color space and gammas for grading. They give you a lot of flexibility, a lot of color fidelity, so they're really great. My note tree looks something like this. It's kind of like a modified version of F1 with a lot of added masks and stuff like that. As far as looks go, I usually use F1, or I have also like my own LUTs that I have created, and I sometimes use them. I still use Dehancer, I still use Film Look Creator, I still use Film Vision and Cineprint 35 stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that I can use with it, and the fact is, they all work really well with the footage, because again, S-Log3, S-Gamut3, 422 10-bit, you're getting really great color fidelity, you're getting really good depth, you're getting really good flexibility. All right, friends, so this is going to be our starting point. So I have all my power grades saved in here. I'm just going to put the look version 2 in here, and I usually start with a note tree like this and looking like this. So I have my CST here, and if I'm going for a stylized look, I usually turn this off and go to my LUT. So this LUT could be anything. This LUT could be my LUT. LUT could be an F1 LUT. But let's say, okay, I'm just going to stick with my LUT for this one. Let's just say Sky. And this is the note tree. Again, this is heavily inspired by F1 by Blaine Westrup, but this is how it looks. So I have my HDR wheels that are mapped to my camera, to my color space. So I kind of overexposed for this, so I'm just going to go with something like this. So I have the second note here to get a bit of a softer roll off. I do think that it gives a little bit of a softer roll off, but that might just be a little bit of a and I have this third roll off here, so I'm just going to use this a little bit. This looks like this, and I will say maybe something like this, just to give us a little bit of a softer roll off. So actually my white balance is here, my primary is here, the white balance would be then something like this, and this already looks good with the LUT. Again, this is the difference of the LUT. I will go into my primaries and add a bit of the teal and orange, the classic teal and orange here, and actually in here I would cool everyone just a little bit. This looks very nice. I would add a little bit of contrast, maybe going into it and saying something like that, and after that I wouldn't densify my colors, and I would actually bring this just a tiny little bit down, maybe turn these tiny little bit down so I'm getting a good one. This looks very cool. I would add my vignettes. I would play maybe with my vignette a little bit, and let's say 1.3. I would not warm it, not distort it, no chromatic aberration. I would add some grain softness and another pane of grain. And maybe the grain would be here a little more. So yeah, this is basically how I usually work within the spot, within this. There's a bit of this whole thing with masks, so I would actually do here a gradient and take it to here and then just enhance the image in a sense, and maybe I would turn this a little down to something like this, a little bit of here, and then also kind of do the same thing in around here. So from this to this, and then we might add a couple more around here, and then, you know, just enhance the image in a sense. So this is what we started with, again, log image, and then this is what we ended. Now that I'm seeing, I would also maybe push this down a little bit. Something like this looks a bit better. Again, we can change the LUTs now. We can go into honey. Okay, this is a little too much. And then I can say, you know what, I'm just going to try 529. So this is kind of how I work. But like 80% of the time, I would say I'm using this like modified note tree and then using either 529 and F1, or I have a LUT called honey, which is like not for sale or anything like that. It's just mine. Or I'm using that. But there are also times where I'm just using a Rec. 709 conversion and then just like adding like contrast and saturation and like very basic modifications to the look that to make it a bit less biting. As far as the Rec. 709 looks, this is a good look to take a look at. This is basically the same thing. I just have a CST here, and most of the work is done by these masks. But I'm just going to turn everything off, and then we can take a look at this one. So start with CST and then do my exposure adjustments here. And I have a color checker there, so I'm just going to use the color checker to do this. I have my primary adjustments here, as you can see, just a little bit of that teal and the shadows and stuff. White balance adjustments, you can see there a little bit of the balance in the whole image, and then I would add my contrast. Now this looks a little bit too much, but when I add the vignette and when I add the masks, it really does make sense. Now I'm going to show you the masks. Usually what masks do is to enhance the image and not change the image. This kind of works in both ways, but I'm going to show you everything. So this kind of balances this place out, and then I have another one that darkens the left side, the neck side a little bit. I have one for the highlights and around my face, around my skin tones. I have another one for this highlighted part because it just bites a little too much, and then I darken that place a little down, and then I play with the highlights just a little bit more, just take them a little more down because again, it's just a little too bitey for my taste. And then, you know, these masks get me from this to this pretty quickly, and then I would add, even though this is like a very modern look, I would still add just a tiny little bit of grain just to add a little bit of texture, and then it's a very little thing but helps a lot. And then yes, kind of looks like this. So yep. It costs like 1,800 euros used. I bought it. You can find it on eBay for like 1,500 euros. I've seen that. I've literally seen a lot of them, like between 1,400 and 1,800. The value that this camera gives at this price point is incredible. Incredible. You're getting real good image quality, you're getting real good dynamic range, you're getting real good a lot of stuff with this camera. With this price, I think the value is in a really hard position to beat. Yes, there's a lot of like Lumix cameras that are around the same price that have more to them, but again, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the FX30, and I think the FX30, the value that this camera gives, with the look that you can get out of this, with the money that you can make with this camera, with the jobs that you can take with this camera, is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And yes, just incredible. Do I wish that the rolling shutter was better? Yeah. Do I wish that there was CFB cards instead of CFA cards? Yeah. Do I wish that there was internal ProRes recording? Yeah. Do I wish that the second native base ISO was 3200 instead of 2500? Yeah. But the thing about it is, everything that I've talked about in this video, every little complaint that I've had is nothing, because none of this stopped me from shooting with this camera. None of these gets in my way of creating, gets in the way of creating a vision. None of this makes me want to stop to shoot. None of this changed the way I shoot. So in my book, if the camera doesn't hinder me and it actually helps me create my vision, that is a good camera. And that is why in my book that this is a great camera. And every point that I've talked about is just like very nitpicky stuff that I think good to know, and that are like quality of life stuff like the CFB cards or like the anamorphic support and stuff like that. They're like quality of life stuff that would be really good if we had them, but none of it is like, oh my god, this is absolutely breaking the way how I interact with the camera. It doesn't, I don't want to pick it up and shoot. None of it is like that. So that's why after all this talk, I'm just saying like, this is a great camera. This is an incredible value, incredible camera, and I really love it. And I'm really grateful that I got to have it. And I love it. I don't know. I have nothing more to say, I think. Yeah, it just makes me want to pick it up and shoot something. And that's the most important thing, right? It just makes me want to do that. It just makes me want to go and wish I had director friends that had projects and I want to shoot with them. So that's the point. For the upgrade path, I always say, if you have extra money that you want to spend, either get good glass, either get lighting equipment, some set design, maybe stuff like that, or if you don't have a driver's license or a car, maybe some of that money should go towards that, because there are a lot more better investments than a new camera body. But for this point's sake, we're gonna strictly focus on the rig and the rig upgrade that I want to do with the FX30. So I have a crappy Viltrox DC550 monitor right now, which is a crappy monitor. So I want to get a new monitor. That's first. I want to get a cine back. That is something that I really enjoy the look of, especially it looks really cool. And that's a really big point to me, that it looks cool, that I want to pick it up. So, and it's also useful too. It's not like it's not useful. It's also useful. I would definitely want to get that. A bigger top handle, that is a longer top handle that goes to the length of the camera, is something that I would want. I would definitely get a new follow focus set. I have the Nucleus Nano 1 right now, which is meh. It's good. It works really well, but it's a bit of a meh. So I would definitely get a new one on that. And there's absolutely a necessity for me to get a good spherical set, which could be like Vespids or Athenas or Arles or Thypox or even like Nightwalkers, anything like that. But there is definitely a need for me to get a good spherical set that works. So that's really important. And then again, the rig that I've talked about. After that, an anamorphic set. I really like the nanomorphs right now, but nanomorphs serve a different purpose to me than my own anamorphic needs. Nanomorphs are great, which I'm gonna, again, next week, nanomorph video, but very basically, nanomorphs are great clean lenses, clean anamorphic lenses that doesn't have a lot of anamorphic character. There are some really great stuff about it that I love too. If I could, I would keep this lens and I would use this as a workhorse lens, because I think it lends itself great to stuff like that. But for my personal anamorphic view, Atlas Mercury's, the one lens costs like what, $8 grand or something like that. It's too much, but we're talking about upgrade paths, right? So that would be that. I want to try out the Remus. I'm renting a Remus in a bit, so I'm going to try out the Remus. I'm trying out the Proteus lenses too in a couple of weeks, so there's also that. But yeah, that's generally the upgrade path of this. This was a long video. I know that I've been recording for the past 72 minutes. God, oh my god. 72 minutes. Yeah. An edit is going to be huge, man. But yeah, I really like doing this. I like talking about stuff in detail, and I really like. I always thought that I don't like this, like, not super scientific, but also not super in the field stuff. I never thought I would like it, but it turns out I really like it, and also making it too. It's really fun, and I'm doing these tests anyway on my own, so sharing it with you is kind of like a good way for me to also remember what I've learned. So I think that's great. A lot more stuff is going to come up in the next couple of weeks, months. There's some cool gear stuff, and I like gear stuff, but of course, like, it's not just gear stuff. A lot of like lighting and color stuff too. It's colored up music video, so that's going to come up at some point. Again, Proteus lenses and remises, and I have the C500 Mark II for a while, so that's going to be one. A lot of great stuff is going to come up, so stay tuned. I have a newfound love again for YouTube because I've been struggling for the past couple of weeks with, the views and stuff. And I know, like, don't care about views and stuff, but when you put like 12 hours just filming a video and then at the end you get like 26 views, it's kind of like, But again, I really like making these videos in general, so it doesn't really matter those views. It's because I'm getting so much fulfillment out of it. So that's the important point. Okay. 74 minutes. So I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for joining me. And I want to show you one more thing. Why is this not pulling, dude? Yeah, I think the battery died on me. Bye.